Hello, I'm Deborah Hills from Queen Mary's School of the Arts. Welcome to Get Spotted. This podcast series is part of our QM Elevate programme, designed to help you build confidence and develop the communication skills you need to succeed at university and in your future career. In each episode, we'll talk with students, alumni and academics from different disciplines and see how engaging with assignments can be a game changer, helping you refine your communication skills and stand out in the workplace. Let's get started. This episode is film studies.
So in the workplace, you're never really going to just write one thing, send it to your boss and it's done. They're always going to give you feedback and you're going to have to take that on board and change to it.
So this podcast looks at two modules from film studies: scriptwriting, social justice and crime, and mapping contemporary cinema. We're going to investigate the communicative practices developed in the assessments and see how the screenwriting modules changed one former student's career goals and how mapping contemporary cinema module bagged our other student the first step on her career ladder. I should say alumni, not students. So let's get everyone to introduce themselves first, and we'll start with Guy.
Hi, I'm Guy Westwell. I'm a reader in film studies and the head of the film studies department.
Hi, I'm Elspeth. I graduated from film studies at QM in 2022.
And I'm Eugene Doyen. I'm a senior lecturer in film practice. I teach scriptwriting and filmmaking.
I'm Elizabeth, and I am currently an MA student in film.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with Eugene's scriptwriting, social justice and crime. Can you tell us about the module and about the assessment that you gave, Eugene?
Yes, scriptwriting, social justice and crime is a final year module, and it builds on students' knowledge of film and film form to develop a feature film treatment, a treatment being a story for a feature film told in prose. It's works as a piece of independent work in terms of students come and develop their own ideas to that particular framework. So it's an opportunity for students to show independent learning, but also to work on an individual creative project of their own devising.
Elizabeth, how did you feel when you saw the assessment, and how did it go with the module and writing story treatment?
When I first saw the assessment, I didn't really know what treatment was. But we had different options, so we didn't necessarily have to write a treatment. We could do an origin story, and I think there was possibly also another option as well.
Yeah, there's a portfolio outline, just sets of different elements of the story.
Yeah, so when I first saw that, I thought the origin story felt like something that I could approach, and I thought that would be a good window into understanding the story that I hadn't come up with yet as well. So I initially kind of went down that route, and then over time we were able to kind of pitch ideas and get feedback both from our peers and also Eugene. I think at first going into it, I wasn't as nervous as I then kind of progressively became when you kind of start building out your ideas and you're sharing unfinished work. So that in itself can be quite nerve-wracking because you're both questioning your own ideas and also, why am I thinking this in the first place? Why do I want to tell this story for one? Which I think was like a big question that I feel like Eugene posed at one point as well. So
what's interesting is that you mentioned pitch and ideas. This module is quite unique in film studies, within the world of film studies, that you have to workshop, you have to give your ideas to your classmates and to Eugene while you're in the middle of formulating them and take feedback, and you have to give them feedback. Did that go, was that okay for you, or anything that you felt you developed?
Yeah, I think you get a bit more comfortable doing it. So I think at first, the kind of as the weeks go on, you get used to sharing ideas and you get used to the reception as well. You get used to knowing that you're going to get some pushback and you're going to have to learn how to explain your ideas. And it's okay if people don't necessarily understand everything, but then it's also really important to take on feedback. Yeah.
Right.
And Elspeth, I know you didn't do this module, but you'd mentioned something about when you're pitching creative ideas. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, with creative ideas, I think it's a lot more personal than with academia. With Guy in Mapping Contemporary Cinema, we also were sharing kind of like our editing ideas and feedback on each other's work. And I think I also found it quite difficult to get into at first, and had that idea of polite social convention where you don't want to be too critical about your friend's work, and also that stance where you're like, well, who am I to critique this? But I think through practicing it, through critiquing others' work and having like your own view at your own work, I just became a lot more used to it. And it was like sorry, it was like, this isn't a negative thing. Just because I think this thing might need to be explained more, or I'm having difficulties understanding it, that doesn't mean the rest of your work is bad. I'm just trying to help you grow and take on more of your strengths so it can be even better.
Absolutely. So for both of you, well, let's ask about this, your Mapping Contemporary Cinema module, and find out what that was.
Sure. I mean, in the final year of the film studies degree, that we run a lot of modules which are on contemporary cinema. So there's contemporary American cinema, contemporary French, contemporary Russian, contemporary Chinese. It's quite wide ranging now. And students on those modules, they select sort of contemporary films and they write fairly long research essays on these films. Really fascinating essays. They look at the sort of cultural and industrial context of those films across this wide range of national cinemas. And I was a bit dismayed that all this amazing work, once it's gone through the gateway and got its grade, 65, 75, whatever, it basically just gets shredded, like metaphorically shredded. The electronic files are deleted. And I just thought there's so much great material there that it would be wonderful to basically save some of it, the best stuff, publish it. So I set up another module, which is called Mapping Contemporary Cinema, which does that work. So it gathers, the students who are taking the module gather together into a sort of editorial board. They sift through the good stuff from these other modules, and then they adopt an essay that they think is really strong, and they work as an editor to prepare it for publication. And, we meet weekly as a sort of editorial board, and we do sort of review of each of the essays. So everyone reads all of them in the end, but you actually are the sort of editor of one in particular. And then over the course of the module, you sort of steer that or shepherd that piece of work to publication, if you can get it to the right level for publication. And that process is really wonderful to be involved with as a teacher, and the students report that they find it interesting. And Elspeth has sort of shepherded one of those pieces of work through. It was a piece of writing on Moana, and it's now published online. It's a really strong essay by the student, and it's a really great piece of editing work by Elspeth.
So we'll have a link to that, so that we can have a look.
Yes, please.
So the idea, Elspeth, of you took someone else's work, and tell us about that. So you're not for this assignment, you're not writing your own thing. You are taking someone else's and critiquing it and getting it ready for publication. It's quite different. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I think, I'd never worked with an editor before. I know other people in the class were like used to doing publications or writing for like magazines, but I'd never really had that type of interaction. Normally it was just you write an essay for your class, you submit, you sort of forget about it. So I think this process was a lot more fluid, which I enjoyed, rather than being able to forget about it. It was, you would come with new ideas and get feedback on them, and you could grow from your strengths. And I think especially seeing the other person's work, identifying what I enjoyed about it and what I thought I could bring to it. Then after going through the whole process, it really helped my other modules and just my communication in general, from taking like that writer skills and applying it for my own. For instance, I think I'm quite good at grammar, but I think the original person had a very kind of like poetic, interesting style of telling the points they were making. So seeing their techniques and the type of structures they were using then helped me in my own communication to keep that more interesting and continuously improve.
Fascinating.
That makes me very happy to hear. Because that question of, sometimes the students will come in and they'll just be really grammarian about it. It's like, I will fix the grammar, and they'll max out on just grammar correction. But that can actually be quite a sort of violent thing to do, and to be obsessed with someone else's work, because you need to also cherish what's good about it. And it may have bad grammar, but it may have great ideas. And ultimately, the ideas are what matter. So the way you posed that was really good.
And I think learning from other people's strengths is great, isn't it? And this idea of, instead of writing, as you said, privately, just for the tutor, knowing that you've got an audience will make you write in a way that thinks about the audience, I guess. Can I ask, Elspeth, are you using any of these skills in your jobs, though, that you've either done or doing? Or will...
Yeah, definitely. I think this also kind of relates to Eugene and Elizabeth's module, where it's when you're in university, everything seems very singular. Like, you know, your tutor's going to read it, but it's probably not going to go beyond that. But all the writing that you do in this module and in Eugene's module, and also just in life in general, you're always writing for an audience. So you can be great at having your point come across, you can be great at grammar, all those things. But if you can't tailor that to a specific audience to get your point across, it's kind of like, well, what's really the point of it, you know? So I think being able to recognize that skill and also not just being so overly academic and critical, kind of making things digestible for a new, broader audience, was things that I found really helpful, from, you know, press releases to also just a simple email. So definitely.
And you mentioned to me when we chatted earlier that there's something very fluid sometimes in your work, and things have to go backwards and forwards and get edited and re-edited. And so this obviously has helped with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, also in the workplace, you're never really going to just like write one thing, send it to your boss and it's done. They're always going to give you feedback and you're going to have to take that on board and change to it. It's so, I guess, in that sense as well, it was a lot more relevant to the actual workplace and growing confidence in those skills and in editing your work to the actual aim and audience that you're trying to reach.
Right. And it goes back to what Elizabeth was saying at the beginning. You had an audience right from the beginning when you were workshopping your ideas. You were always noticing, how did the other students and Eugene help you develop and change, and to what extent?
I guess it's more so, I think one of the main things that I remember, especially when it comes to reception and your audience, is people were not hypercritical. So I think that which is always nice early on, because these are just kind of burgeoning ideas and nothing's kind of set in stone. So everyone's kind of working through their own thoughts of where they want to take the story and what kind of story they even want to tell. So I think it was really helpful, because sometimes when it comes to the reception, people would ask really kind of helpful questions, for one, that would provoke a lot of thought. And then you'd also have sometimes when there's silence and you're like, okay, I guess perhaps this is one to think about as well. So I think
Drop down.
yes.
Okay. Right. Okay. So we're seeing in these modules that writing is collaboration, and you're doing a master's now, is that right? Any of the skills that you've been using and the collaborative style of thinking and writing and presenting that you did with Eugene or possibly with Guy that you're using now in your master's?
Definitely. There is, on our directing fiction module at the moment, the film that we just filmed, I co-wrote with the person who's directing it. So I think that learning to collaborate, or just creating an environment in which you can share ideas and actually develop something, is definitely something that I feel like the university is creating an atmosphere for.
An atmosphere of collaboration,
Yeah,
and trust and constructive criticism.
Yeah,
Sounds like you've done your job then. Eugene.
Well, it's amazing to hear.
It is, isn't it? And I'm guessing in the film workplace, you have to have your ideas, and being individual, you have to be prepared to be critiqued. And
yeah, I mean, just to chase upon something else Elspeth said, that feeling that the students talk about when they initially come into contact with the piece of writing, which is, oh, I'm imagining that, because they don't know the student may have written that essay and then graduated, for example. So they don't get to actually interact with the author in the way that an actual editor would. So it's a little bit artificial, but the way they just really are respectful and careful about how they approach that piece of work as if it's a person with feelings is really wonderful to behold, because it really makes you feel good about human beings being kind and considerate to one another. But then there's the question of sort of looking after the writer also comes into contact with the question of looking after the reader. And so there's this sort of dual responsibility in the editor to sort of make sure both those people are looked after. And that means sometimes you have to be harder on the writer to make sure the reader's happy. And that, I think that's a good thing to figure out in the workplace, in life, and in life in general, that there are these sort of processes of communication. And you're usually in the middle of them, whether you're a manager or someone writing an email or a pitch for a film. It's a sort of complex, connected process.
Absolutely. So it isn't just a communicative skill, is it? It's like a way of being, a way of thinking, an attitude towards the audience and towards what you get.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Eugene, anything else we should say?
Well, I was interested in Elizabeth mentioning that it gets tougher as it gets to the end, and I think that's because I suppose it's a bit like I saw immediately, getting to the top of the mountain, is you think, well, the bottom is the hard, but in fact, to do with that extra bit of refining, and in terms of quality of work and diligence, I think this counts for both modules. It's always that extra real close attention to detail, close attention to writing, understanding of the brief that really produces the excellent piece of work. So the modules are strongly supported, but the challenge they set for the student is to reach the highest level is a big challenge to reach. And I think it's again important to mention again this preparation for leaving. And we're using the term collaboration, but that exchange is always going to happen within the film and media industries, and much more in jobs than it used to do. So I think is important, and it's good to hear about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I just say, like, the real worlding of it. So although what we're doing is modeling an editorial board, we're not actually publishing a journal. It's us doing that and then putting stuff online, but we model what an editorial board would do. So we've got like a house citation style that's very exacting. And then students sort of cruise into that. They've been doing it a bit haphazardly because, the school guidelines require you to cite in a certain way, but it doesn't really matter that much. But then it has to be right in order to be published. So everything has to be matched to the house style. And suddenly students are like, oh, yeah, well, it does have to be, because it's out in the world and we don't want every piece on the website to look slightly different. So it suddenly clicks that, okay, the real world, the preciseness with which you have to operate to get things out in the real world is at a much higher level than the preciseness that you need to, say, get an A at university. So students come onto the module, they're often A-grade students, and they've sort of feel like they've already got to the destination because they're A-grade students, but then you're pushing them further because real worlding it means going beyond that. Would that fit with your experience? Because you were an A-grade student joining the module, right?
Yes.
So, but then, did you feel that it pushed you beyond that a bit? Beyond where you got to at that point?
So I think I previously did Guy's US Contemporary Cinema module, and I remember like the amazing essays from that would get published, and I was very competitive with myself and not really with other people, just more kind of driving for myself and making sure I could get the best grades I could. So I think kind of having that experience on the module before, it was not humbling. I think that's a bit too far. It was kind of like driving me to do better and showing that even though what Guy said, like you might get really high marks, it's more of a different ball game and more like in real life in a way where you can't just, I'm not sure, like it's not like you can't just skid through it, but like you really need to work on things and continuously improve. And kind of what we were saying before with the fluidity and the collaboration process, it's not necessarily just yourself who does it once and it's all great. In the real world and in life, it is a lot more you trying to continuously improve and collaborate with others, and that's how you get such great results.
Absolutely brilliant. And just one last thing, your critique of Mona is on the website that we'll have a link to, and you said you used it in your CV, was it? Or?
Yes, so when I was at university, I used it on a cover letter for like, I think it was like a writing and research internship at like this film environmental collective. And I spoke I edited a lot about the environmentalism of it and the feminism and representation. So I thought that was a really great piece to reference, which landed me this internship. And from that, I kept connections with the co-founder of the place and like built that up into kind of like a freelance job. And from that, I was then able to work for the London Film Festival and kind of put a foot in the door of like actual film career contracts. So it was definitely helpful. And I think it wasn't, while it is like the soft skills I learnt and the hard skills, I think having that demonstrable interest and being able to prove that within my cover letters and speak about it was something which was really helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask one last question, and that's to Elizabeth. You mentioned that the story treatment that you gave to Eugene is still alive. It's still...
Oh, yeah. I guess it's something that I'm still working on. So it's something that I keep kind of going back to and just building and constantly reworking.
So watch this space.
I wouldn't say that, but you said it.
Can you just give us a little snapshot of what the story treatment is about? Because we've discussed it in a very sort of dry, abstract way.
Yeah.
I mean, Elspeth has talked about Moana, and that gives people a sense of the film and they can read it. But maybe you want to just give us a snapshot.
Okay, a snapshot would be, it's basically set in an alternate world, an alternate universe in which 17-year-old girl is sucked into this world where she's like caught in between the beginnings of some sort of ancient ritual, and then she turns into a witch as the leader of this clan that's about to fight all. Yeah.
I'll watch it.
And the social context, it's colonialism and imperialism, and it's so at a core it still has that credibility within an academic context in terms of creative and using film studies and film theory to write creatively.
Thank you. I just think it's great that you're still with it and it's still going. It's not just a dead assignment that you got your A grade for or something.
Well, hopefully it will be a feature film at some point.
We'll be at the premiere.
I'm gonna watch it. It sounds really cool.
Yeah. It's just fun to write. So just keep doing it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think that we can see that we're talking here about a creative, quite competitive industry, but the communicative practices that we're talking about today are all, they're not just designed to give you an edge in the workplace, but they're going to make you a kind of more interesting and effective human.
You'll find all of the links discussed on the Get Spotted webpage. And if you want help in developing your communication skills, why not sign up for the Communicate with Impact Masterclass or one of our other modules, free to all QM students. Details on the QM Elevate webpage.